Hello, and welcome to Get Recc'd. I am your host, Stephen Falgout.
And I am your other host, Don Falgo. Get Recc'd is our podcast where we, Stephen and I, two siblings, get together and recommend a piece of media to each other, be it an album, a game, a movie, a whatever. And then we come back next episode to discuss those recommendations.
And welcome. How was your last fortnight? Did you get any chicken dinners? Get that big win royale?
Is a chicken dinner a term in Fortnite, or was that? Because I'm so lost. I've never touched it. I've never touched it before. I'm sorry.
Well, it's
So I guess in that
really
sense,
came from-
my last fortnight wasn't very good.
oh, yeah. It came from PUBG, actually, but
What's the diff? It's fine.
what's the difference? Yeah.
It's fine.
It's all fighter royales is what they call it, correct?
Yeah, we're really up to date and hip right now.
Scruffs in the arena.
I feel like I feel like we're
Where are we descending, boys?
We're going to make our namesake on this podcast of being the only podcast still referencing Fortnite in 2030. In our 2030 intro New Year's episode, we're gonna reference Fortnite again.
Yeah, when they've added the whole United States as a character. Have you seen?
And no
I don't
one's
know if
playing.
you've seen anything of Fortnite, but basically, like, for a while there, they had Star Wars characters. Then they added like every Marvel character, and you could fight Thanos, and you could beat Thanos. And then now there's the Mandalorians in there.
No, but I was shown the.
Also, Travis Scott.
I know about Travis Scott. Let me search this real quick so I'm not thinking of something. Yeah, I was shown the John Wick in Fortnite where they had to not use Keanu Reeves' likeness. So they had to make a character that looks like John Wick, but isn't Keanu Reeves.
It's Keanu Reeves.
And it's pretty funny. Or I guess they got the Keanu Reeves thing now. I don't know. Who cares? Who cares? Does anyone play Fortnite anymore? I don't think so. Everyone plays I don't know. What do people play now? Not that. Or do they play that? Five Nights at Freddy's 4.
Mainly Minesweeper.
Oh, okay, yeah.
People are back on Minesweeper.
Yeah, the wave of nostalgia for Minesweeper hit. Everybody went to their pirating sites to download the old XP version. Or
there actually is a Minesweeper roguelike. I was gonna make a joke that it's a roguelike now, but actually that does already exist.
Wow. That's actually kind of sick.
Yeah, it's pretty fun actually.
Wow. Well, there you go. There's our recommendation to all of you.
That's our recommendation. So goodbye, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
We're pretty much done. Although...
oh, in the chat they said Among Us. Yeah, Among Us, that's true.
That's right. They do the game. Wow. Well, anyway, do we want to move on to what you recommended to me last time, Steven?
Yes, let's do it. Dawn, last time I recommended to you Lounge Against the Machine, which is, I believe, the first album from Richard Cheese. Richard Cheese is, I don't know, I guess you'd call him a satirist. He basically just takes pop songs and does big band or jazz versions of them. So I will hand that over to you.
Yeah. So
I'm just going to say, wait, before we start, I'm just going to say, like, after I gave you this recommendation, I was like, man, this is going to be hard as hell to talk about.
Not really, actually. First thing that I want to say is that Richard Cheese is, like, still going. And, like, not only is he still going, but nothing has changed. This dude has literally released, like, 10 albums or something around there of this one joke. So shout out to that.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely leans into it, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's weird. So this reminds me a lot of
like what Weird Al does, except Weird Al does it with polka, right? Like, oh, you take like serious songs and you put them in like a style that everybody makes fun of or that is silly or whatever. And by doing so, you kind of like can make the songs funny because of the, you know, the juxtaposition of the two things. And it's like I feel like compared to like easy listening lounge club music like that, like polka's probably funnier. But I will say that if there was ever a time where you could like take popular songs and put them into a lounge style and make them funny, it would have been the early 2000s. You know, it was weird to me when I found out that Richard Cheese kept going, and I've heard a recent style parody he did after listening to this as well. It was weird to me because I felt like this album right here, and even the title, like Lounge Against the Machine and everything, it feels like the kind of thing that could have only happened in that time. Like, this is the only time you would think, like, wouldn't it be really funny if I put these songs in this style? Because, you know, this was the era of nu metal, and it came after the whole decade of alternative rock and grunge, and, you know, the time period when popular music got a lot more depressing and self-serious. And so, like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if, you know, I make it silly or whatever? And actually, I think it was 2003, Weird Al did a polka that was basically the polka version of this, Angry White Boy Polka, where it was a polka with all of the nu metal songs and stuff. And it is definitely, like, that is definitely funny. Like, on this album, you have like a parody of Last Resort, you know, Papa Roach, Nookie, Break Stuff, you know, Limp Bizkit, and of course Rage Against the Machine and other bands like that. It's a joke that kind of like explains itself. Like, you look at the title and you see there's 16 songs that are lounge covers of these songs, and you're like, ha, you know, that's funny. But you know, that's kind of it. Like, I think a year after this, he put out another album called Toxicity, which I looked at the track list. I didn't listen to it, but I looked at the track list, and it's pretty much the same deal. So, here you really are, like, leaning into this one gag, and so it's one of those things where, like, damn well better be funny, because if it isn't, then, like, what a stupid waste of time. But to its credit, I mean, it is pretty funny, and I think like Richard Cheese is actually surprisingly competent as a performer too. Like, I think he actually plays into the gag really well. He obviously has like a decent understanding of like all of the corny tropes of what you'd call lounge music, and he also has a decent understanding of these songs, I think, because he kind of knows where to like add a line or something just to make it cornier or sillier. So it's definitely not like half-assed, and you know, credit for that.
Yeah, I would say the one thing about Richard Cheese is it's like one shade above Kids Bop, I would say. And that he's done it for as long as he has, it's starting to feel like now that's what I call music.
Yeah.
Like, whereas Weird Al, who's not the same, but, you know, definitely a similar genre, kind of comedy style music parody, there's at least a lot of concerted effort towards songwriting and that sort of thing. This is strictly a one-note gag that he's gone on to do forever. But with that being said, I mean, this is the first of that, and I think probably the funniest of that, because the track list is really good. Like, Smack My Bitch Up is probably the best one that I can think of off this album. But, like, if you've heard one of these off the album, like, you know what's happening, and, like, you get the gag, really. So I guess my question is, like, does somebody pick this up and listen to it? You know, like, no, I'm not really into that Rage Against the Machine, but I do like that Richard Cheese, so I'll listen to those versions of the songs instead.
Well, you see, you buy the album so you can laugh at the packaging. and then you put it on your shelf.
Right.
No, I mean, no, I do think the album is pretty good for what it is. Because, like, you know, it's 16 tracks, but it's really short. This album's like a half an hour. And it's like, I think there are a couple blunders here, because I think one of there's two problems that do come up occasionally, depending on the song that he's covering. And it's either that, one, the song just really doesn't come across that funny in this style. Like, there's Guerrilla Radio, which is the Rage song on here. I don't know why you choose that one. Like, if I was thinking, what would be a really funny Rage Against the Machine song, you know, to do a style parody of, it's obviously Killing in the Name. Like, one, that's their most, you know, famous song. And also, those lyrics would definitely, like, translate a lot funnier to, like, a lounge juxtaposition. The only reason I can imagine he chose Guerrilla Radio is because they say shit in the chorus, and it's like, haha, he said shit, and there's, like, lounge music, which is actually a lot of the joke. A lot of the time, it's like he said the F word, and there's lounge music. And I mean, like, it's funny sometimes if the rest of the lyrics around it kind of enhance the silliness of that, but, like, in Guerrilla Radio, like, it just doesn't really work. There's also, like, he covers Bullet the Blue Sky by U2, and I don't even... it doesn't even fit with the collection. Like, you know, the whole idea is, oh, it's all these, like, alternative songs, you know. Fucking Bullet the Blue Sky? Like, you know, Joshua Tree U2? Like, what? Okay. Just doesn't really fit. It's not funny. I think the only reason it's on here is probably because he's, like, a U2 fan and he just wanted to do it. I mean, more power to him. And there was one other one that was like this that... is slipping my mind. But whatever the case, that's one thing that can happen. And the other thing that can happen is a little bit unfortunate. It's something I think that Weird Al is really good at avoiding. And that's that, like, there are moments where I think the choice of song was probably pretty tasteless. Like, it's funny, right? Because the album's so tame and the joke is so tame. It shouldn't be. But, like... do you really want to cover Rape Me on this? You know, like, that just doesn't feel right. And doesn't really work too well. It's kind of one of those things you listen to and cringe. It just didn't really come out too well. And he also covers Holiday in Cambodia by Dead Kennedys, which has the N-word in it. And he says it. So, yeah, I don't know about that. Also, that wasn't a hard song to leave off. I mean, like, you know, all the other ones, well, except for the U2 one, are all, like, 90s songs. And, like, you know, songs from that year. So, Dead Kennedy's, like, 30 years old by that point. I don't know. So those are the two things that I think happen, the two biggest, like, flaws here. But other than that, it really is, like, you get what you get. It's, like, song after song of, haha, this is, like, a cornier version of a you know, an angry, angsty song. And it works fine. But... It again, I just have to question, like, is this joke really good enough to warrant more material? And it just doesn't seem like it to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And then he's been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah, well...
plus, honestly.
To give him a little bit more credit, actually, on that point, this is definitely something that I think has come about more in, like, the, you know, YouTube era and stuff. There are definitely, like, a lot of people on YouTube who will do things like this, where they'll take, like, a pop song and they'll put it in, like, a contrasting style, you know. And sometimes it's to be funny, other times it's just to be cool or whatever. But it's something a lot more people do now. I mean, even on mainstream television, more people do it now. Like Jimmy Fallon. Is it Jimmy Fallon? Who's the late night funny man guy who has the... Yeah, there's, like, one of them does, like, a bit where it's, like, they take, like, children's instruments.
Yeah, that's Fallon.
That's Fallon, yeah. So I've seen stuff like that. So there's a lot of people who do this same thing. And Richard Cheese wasn't the first. You know, I mean, Weird Al was already doing it with Polka. I'm sure there's other examples. But still, like, to hit it before that time is cool, I guess. And I'm sure that Richard Cheese, like, has influence on people who are doing that kind of thing. And I also do think, again, that he's better at it than people on YouTube who take, like, Bad Guy and make it metal or whatever. So I don't mean to say that, like, his entire career is some giant sham or something. I think the joke is inherently kind of funny. And also, by the way, I wanted to get to this later, but the one new parody of his that I heard was his cover of WAP. And that was actually pretty funny. Like, so, like, it's like every now and again, I think he's going to get lucky. And, there's going to be a new pop song that's like perfect for this. But like, that was the only one I heard. And I don't know if he was doing like pop songs or popular hip hop songs for the last like decade or two. But there really probably were not that many that, work like that. You got lucky with WAP, okay? But anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you've already mentioned it, but he does have technical chops too. So it's production is good, instrumentation is good, his actual singing quality is good. And I think all of that has to be the case for it to stand up on its own. Because if any of it was kind of half-assed, I don't think it would. The joke wouldn't stick. The joke wouldn't land.
Yeah, I appreciate that it's not super lazy. Like, actually, the "Come Out and Play" parody works not because the song is that funny in this style, because it really isn't, but it's because his performance is just so like genuinely infectious on the song. Like, I think he really did give a shit making this, which is cool. More power to you. And I think it also shows that he probably did have respect for the material he was covering. Like, even though I mentioned sometimes it feels like it's not really in good taste, I don't think it's like disrespectful, which is another way that I think he compares to Weird Al. And I guess it would put him up there as one of the better parody artists, one of the two good ones. Yeah. So there you go.
Okay, well that's kind of all I have to say on it, really. Like, the thing is, it's like incredibly straightforward.
Yeah, well, do you want to wrap it up? We can wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can wrap it up.
So yeah, again, like, would I recommend listening to this? I mean, listen to a track or two, listen to whatever one looks the funniest to you. You'll probably get a laugh. It's like, again, like I said, you see the cover art, you see the title, you know what you're in for, you get the joke. But he sells it to some degree. I would give it like a 6, I think. That's probably where I'd land it. Yeah, I mean, 1, because of the inconsistency that's there that I mentioned, but also just because even at its best, it's like really not that good. It's just, you'll get a chuckle out of it. And I guess that's what comedy music is supposed to do. Yeah, I guess the only takeaway is that, like, just be careful with how much you lean into a joke. That's like, I don't know. Like, you don't need to stick, I don't feel like you need to stick your entire career on one thing. That feels like pigeonholing yourself, but he's better at it than he should have any right to be, so that's more power to him for that, I guess.
Wait, okay. Sorry. Hold up. I'm going through the Wikipedia page here. There's some real gems. So first of all, the band members consist of Richard Cheese, Bobby Ricotta, Frank Fetta, and Billy Blue. So there's that.
Wow.
But wait, hold up.
Oh.
Then I'm looking at what they've done. So they performed in some films. Some of these I don't think are like too surprising. They performed in apparently Dawn of the Dead, where they played Down with the Sickness, but like their version, I'm guessing.
Wait,
but then
what?
Yeah. But then they were in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, where they played Night and Day and Every Time We Say Goodbye.
I don't remember that.
They were in the Lego Batman movie, Man in the Mirror and Everything is Awesome. What? I'm guessing those are just album appearances. I have to imagine. I definitely don't remember Richard Cheese in Batman v Superman. Apparently, they played private events for Brian Setzer, Travis Barker. Let's see, some other names here. The band Muse, and Zack Snyder.
Yo, Zack Snyder got a private Richard Cheese show.
And then put him in Batman v Superman.
Nice.
What the heck?
Wow.
They were on the Fox and Friends morning show on Fox News.
Well, that I can believe.
They were in Jimmy Kimmel Live. That's all definitely believable. Huh. Well,
I think I read that they were
interesting.
that Richard Cheese was like friends with Fallon.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, they seem like they come from a similar, cut from the same cloth, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, what are your final thoughts?
Huh. Well, anyway, well, now that I know that he was on Batman v Superman, that like changes everything.
Yeah, I have to
me,
give this a
honestly.
10. I have to give this a 10 now. So,
Oh wait, hold up. No. Wait, this gets better because they were not in Dawn of the Dead. They were in the 2004 Zack Snyder remake of Dawn of the Dead,
Well, yeah.
where they covered Down with the Sickness.
well, yeah, obviously that one. I don't think that they were in the 70s one. I don't think they were
Hey.
covering Down with the Sickness in the 1970s, but that
Hey,
would
you
have
never
been
know.
something. Maybe they time traveled, like
Yeah, you
get
never
a
know.
taste of this.
Huh. They were also in Batman v Superman. Warner Brothers hired the band to perform and appear as animated Lego minifigs in Lego Batman movie, singing Man in the Mirror and performing an elevator music version of Everything is Awesome. Wow. All right. Well, they've been okay, so that's a whole new thing. My thoughts. I think that it's fun. It's a fun album, but the only thing is I think it overstays its welcome, honestly. And especially because they've been doing it for so long. Like, you can definitely pick and choose some songs off of this list. There are definitely highlights and a couple lowlights. But it's fun to listen to. And it's funny, not in like the laugh out loud way, kind of in the haha way. But, or like when you send a text back, LOL, even though you didn't laugh at it.
Yeah, you just kind of
It's
like
kinda-
breathe through your nose.
Yeah, it's kind of in that way. So, I recommend it. I think I'd give it like a 6 or a 7. Like, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's funny enough to definitely deserve a listen through, at least for some of the songs.
All right. Well, I guess that's that. So we should move on to what I recommended to you.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Well, last time I recommended George Harrison's album All Things Must Pass. This was essentially George Harrison's debut solo album, a double album. George Harrison from the Beach Boys, of course. All right. Well, I'll pass it over to you, Steven.
I love George Harrison from the Beach Boys.
Yeah, they were a great band.
So, All Things Must Pass. I had not heard this album before, but I've definitely heard tracks off of the album. And also, like, the track list of this thing was super hard to nail down. I think ultimately you had to send me like a Spotify playlist. And even on Wikipedia, like, the track list is all muddied and weird. But that's kind of today's problem, not problems of the album. I will say the one thing I noticed is, like, right away this thing hits you. Like, it grabs you from second one. That first track is just so good, and then it does not let go for the entire runtime. So I'm talking about starting with I'd Have You Anytime. Just, first of all, George Harrison has really great vocal quality. The instrumentation is great. You would expect that from anybody from the Beach Boys. So hearing all that and hearing this from a solo career from Harrison, first of all, it's interesting to compare Harrison's solo career to others, specifically the Beach Boys' most famous member, Ringo Starr. The quality here is just impeccable. And that Bob Dylan is on this thing too, which I actually didn't even know necessarily until kind of like after hearing it a couple times.
He wrote two of the songs. One of them is a Bob Dylan cover, and he wrote the chorus, I think, to I'd Have You Anytime.
Right, exactly. So hearing that he's a part of that, like, that just kind of amplifies the quality here. But I don't even think it needs to be there, if that makes sense. Like, Harrison stands alone in all of the tracks here. And then I'll just go out and say probably the most famous track here, the track that gets the most radio play, My Sweet Lord, is just an incredible piece of music. And honestly, I felt that just from the beginning all the way through to the end. the other thing I would say is like it never really feels overly long. There are even some tracks that are longer than others. I think one track is 7-ish minutes long or however long it is. But the thing that's different about this, which I find sometimes in other things that we've recommended before, is it's like those don't overstay their welcome. They feel very specifically crafted to be that way and not stitched in any sort of manner or lengthened for any sort of reason. Like creatively, it's so impeccable that I think that it's very easy to see the thought behind it and then to hear that as well. And it's very easy to listen to this album too. Like no part of this necessarily is like that controversial.
I think challenging is the word you're looking for. Yeah.
Challenging. Like it's a very easy, listenable album, but it has a really strong message. It has a really great quality. The production is great. The instrumentation is great, as I mentioned. Harrison's vocal is great, as I mentioned. And then the lyrics are great as well, from start to finish. And like I said, it really starts super strong with the first track. And then I never felt like it gave up from there.
Yeah, I mean, it really speaks wonders to Harrison's songwriting ability, like in the band. You know, when he was with the Beach Boys, they didn't let him write.
Oh, wait. You know what? I'm just remembering now. He wasn't with the Beach Boys. He was with the Beastie Boys.
Oh, right.
We always get it mixed up.
Wait,
but yeah,
the Monkees?
Beastie Boys.
Was it See, now I'm just lost because I don't know if it's the Beach Boys. I don't know if it's the Beastie Boys. I don't know if it's like the Kinks. I don't know. It's, whatever.
Disturbed?
Well, anyway, when George Harrison was with the band, they didn't really let him. They didn't give him a lot of songs per album for him to write. Most songs were penned by Lennon McCartney, and like Harrison would get like a song or two per album, and that lasted for every record they ever put out. Even the White Album, Harrison gets what, three songs, maybe 4, maybe. I think it's just 3.
But even then, you can tell. I mean, so many of those are just absolute classics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, almost every single, like, Harrison penned song in their career are some of their most well-known and most just best songs. Like, the dude was an amazing songwriter, and he didn't really get his chance to fully shine. Actually, a lot of the material on All Things Must Pass was written for the White Album? I'm pretty sure. I was going to say Abbey Road. It was written in that period. No. I'm sorry. Let It Be. I think Let It Be was definitely the one where some of the songs on this album he had written and presented to Lennon McCartney, and they didn't let him put it on, which is weird considering the ones that he did get on that album. But anyway, that's a whole thing. But the point is that, like, he clearly had, like, tons of amazing songs in him because this is a double album worth of material. And, like, is there even a miss on this? Like, I mean, there's some songs that you might want to scrap on for a Beatles album, but, it's whatever. But, like, so much of this is absolutely top shelf stuff. The entire first disc of this album is just unbelievable. Like, the run of songs on the first disc of this is insane. I mean, you mentioned I'd Have You Anytime, and then, like, it follows that up with My Sweet Lord, and already it's just like, that's crazy. Like, so many, like, all-timers here. And again, just purely penned by him, with the exception of, like, one Bob Dylan cover and one song that Bob Dylan helped on, and that's just really, really amazing. And I think, like, when you listen to solo albums by other Disturbed members, they honestly just don't have this consistent of a level of songwriting quality. John Lennon definitely, like, his goal, I think, in his music was to do something a lot more raw, and he definitely did a lot of interesting things. And of course, there's Imagine, which is an album that's built up of, very songwriting oriented stuff. But, like, I'm not going to say that, like, John Lennon proved himself to be, like, one of the best songwriters ever with his solo work. And I certainly wouldn't say that about McCartney, and Ringo exists. So, like, it this record is just like, to me, it genuinely feels like another Beatles album. Like, it feels like it has that same magic, that same spark, and that same, like, just consistently high level of quality, more so than anything any of the other members produced.
And what's interesting is, the System of a Down was so influential in the 60s, but then this, you can immediately tell how influential it becomes for the 70s. Like, so many people tried to emulate this style and this sound coming from this album. Not that this thing was necessarily like completely unique. You can tell he takes a lot of influence from multiple genres and styles, but all in a very uniquely crafted way that absolutely influences the sound of a lot of artists of that time frame.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it continues really on that Harrison tradition. Like, when you listen to the songs he did have with Oasis, like, there were a lot of those songs do have that same kind of like Harrison sound that this record has. And I think that speaks a lot to his talent as a songwriter. Like, his songs can't just be placed among everybody else's and just like blend in. And I think a lot of that, especially later on, and especially with this album, was just his spirituality, and his connection to spirituality, which is the biggest theme on this record. That's apparent from track 2 onward. Of course, you have like your love songs or whatever, but even a lot of those are imbued with this spirituality and this sense of like global human connection that a lot of the album is about, and that makes it a very, very strongly positive record. And it does so with so much life and beauty, that it's an album that really does feel life affirming in that sense. Like, you put it on and it just feels so good. You feel so good. A lot of that is just because the music is so blissful and great in itself. But I think genuinely that his message of spirituality comes through so strongly on this record, more than anything he really did before, I think. And like,
yeah, I'll just say quickly, I completely agree. And that's kind of where I was going for when I was mentioning that none of it's challenging. Like, it's very easy to listen to, very uplifting. And I think what's different between this album versus a lot of 70s standards that kind of try to emulate this style is they can feel very drab. They can feel uplifting, but not empowering. They can feel almost a little boring. This never feels that way. And I guess I want to call out like ELO, and I like ELO a lot, but you can definitely tell a lot of ELO style is very similar to what's going on in this album, but a lot of those standards don't have that same spiritual uplifting quality that you get in this album. And like, specifically, I'm looking at My Sweet Lord, which you can tell is very impactful for that time frame and is just so enriching.
well, yeah, it's a song that makes you see God. It will convert anyone, and I feel that way about a lot of the record. But he brings that spirituality through the music so much that you like genuinely feel it. You feel it come through you. It's just not really something that you hear in other like American or British or whatever artists who try to tackle like religious themes of any sort. So it's very inspired in that sense. And it does certainly separate like George Harrison's solo from John Lennon's solo, without a doubt. Because like George Harrison's putting My Sweet Lord on his first main album, and John Lennon's putting God on his. It's like two very starkly contrasting ideas that they're tackling with, but they both do it well. The one thing about All Things Must Pass that doesn't have anything to do with its quality or anything, but it's something that you mentioned I did at least want to bring up, especially if anybody is inspired to go listen to this and hasn't before. This album was marketed as a triple album back when it came out because there is a third disc that was attached with the album. It's called Apple Jam, and
George Harrison, anytime he's ever spoken about it, has said that it is a bonus disc of material. It's not like part of the album, but people always hear it as a part of the album. It's still called a triple album to this day. And if you go on Spotify, it's even worse, because Spotify's like has all like the deluxe editions where like the first disc has bonus tracks, so there's like extra stuff in the middle, and it's just a total mess. But I think it would be doing the album a great disservice to like listen to, I mean, forget the new bonus tracks, but even to listen to this bonus disc as like a part of it, because the bonus disc is literally like jam band stuff that has nothing to do with anything he was doing on the rest of this. And I sincerely think that as a double album, this is one of the most coherent and cohesive double albums like ever made. It is such a unifying statement. Hear Me Lord as the closer is just huge. It does wonders for the message of this record, and it leaves you feeling so spiritually lifted. It almost saddens me to think that people then, keep going when it's like the rest of it was kind of just like an extra thing, But that's, I guess ultimately it's neither here nor there. I just think people should be aware of that.
Well, that is interesting that you mentioned that, because I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, and it mentions that the Rolling Stone album guide, I guess one of the reviewers or the writer of that album guide, actually calls this album a bit overrated because of the blues jams.
A lot of people say that. I know it makes me that's why I felt the need to bring it up, because a lot of people just don't even know that like Harrison threw it as a bonus, which is frustrating, because like if you listen to this and you're like, wow, that was great, up until it just turned into a bunch of jams. It's like, it did it. That sucks, but...
Yeah. Yeah, and I obviously didn't even listen to that. I just listened to the, I guess technically it's 4 sides, because it's 2 discs.
Yeah, well,
I just listened to the two discs worth of content.
One thing I will say, as a the most minor point of criticism, but the only thing that holds me back a tiny bit with this record, because it is like truly a phenomenal album. The second disc definitely isn't as strong as the first disc. Like the first disc is legitimately just a run of god tier material. God tier, one, because it's spiritual, but also
sweet Lord material.
Yeah, but it's just so incredible. And there are songs that are that good on the second disc. There's the title track is just incredible. The second version of Isn't It a Pity, not as amazing as the first version, but I mean, like, we can't all be God, Ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp, Burr of Darkness, like those songs are up there with the ones on the first disc, but like there are some lower points, and like some songs that, it was kind of what I was saying, like, okay, if you give that to the Beatles, like, yeah, they're going to throw it out. I don't know why he would give it to the Beatles, having been a member of Linkin Park, but if he chose to, they probably wouldn't have been cool with it. There's Apple Scruffs.
And Sync was like, so influential. So
yeah, like there's Apple Scruffs, which isn't my favorite thing, and then like I Dig Love, which is kind of like the obvious filler track. I don't usually like to describe stuff that way, but if you could describe anything that way on this record, that one doesn't feel like it took a lot of time to write. It still jams though, but yeah, that's the only thing. But like even then, compared to other double albums that can feel inconsistent, this album doesn't feel inconsistent at all, and it also never feels like it's dragging. Any tracks that aren't as good as other ones aren't like back to back. They're kind of just in there with everything else. And so, yeah, that's my only contention.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, again, to my point of it being easy to listen to, like that definitely helps. I feel like sometimes when we talk about albums, there are stretches in the track list that get samey, or the quality definitely is not as high. And I don't feel like that's the case here at all. There's consistent quality throughout the whole thing, but I definitely agree that the first disc is just incredible. And then going into the second disc, there are some really amazing tracks on there too.
Okay, well, that sounds like we're done. So do we want to wrap it up?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, well, you go first.
Yeah, I will start. I definitely recommend it. What I'm going to say is, it's like, I feel like we've been on kind of a hot streak. Maybe we've been too nice to each other, but like, oh man, it would be hard for me not to give this at least a 9. And I think I would go as high as a 9.5. It's close to a 10 though, in my mind. But I feel like we've got a lot of 10s lately. That doesn't change my thoughts on this. I do think there are, I didn't mention it, but we kind of just highlighted it or alluded to it here. There are definitely tracks that aren't as great as others. But the other thing is, it's like, it's hard to keep that in mind when there's such a consistent quality against so many tracks. So with that, I'd still probably say a 9.5. Yeah, it's really tough though, because I would honestly put this as one of my favorite albums ever. So maybe that alone warrants a 10.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree, a 9.5 as well. And it is also one of my favorite albums ever. A top 50 for me, for sure. Like, I'm a huge, massive Beatles stan. But I don't, when it comes to their solo material, it's just never something, it's just never really been something that I've cared about. Like, McCartney has some great songs in him for sure. John Lennon has great albums. Ringo exists, but I mean, like, this record to me, it's a George Harrison album, but it captures that magic that I hear in the Beatles that I just don't hear from other music. Like, not to say there isn't other music that's as good as, or, even personally more significant to me than Beatles albums, but there's like a certain kind of magic that they had that I just don't hear in other bands. And
yeah, when you're listening to Public Enemy's Abbey Road, it's just like,
yeah,
wow,
yeah. Shit, you're right. I broke the joke. Well, I was being ironic because he wasn't a member of the Beatles. Anyway. But yeah, like, this record captures that same feeling. It really, really does. And it does it in a different way. The spirituality that George Harrison would bring to his songs on albums like The White Album and Abbey Road, it comes through way more here, and it's the entire way through. And it genuinely does so in just such a beautiful, magical way. It's just such an incredible record. And I really can't recommend it enough. Like, I think it's one of the best double albums ever made, for sure. And yeah, there's not much else to say about it. It's just really great. So I think we both agree on that. And we should move into recommendations, if that's okay.
Let's do it.
All right, you go first. Oh, well, and explain the theme.
Yes, so coming up in the next fortnight, where we're finally going to get that victory royale, we are going to have our holiday theme. Of course, as we all know, Toyotathon is upon us. Although, honestly, with 2020, I don't know if they're having a Toyotathon, but we celebrate it anyway in our hearts and in our minds. So the recommendations for next episode will be holiday themed. I am going to recommend to you a true classic holiday movie. That movie is 1992's Batman Returns by Tim Burton.
All right, well, and then I, Steven, am recommending another true classic holiday film. I don't remember the year. 2000 something. It doesn't matter. Elf. This is a film where Will Ferrell is an elf. Thanks everybody
Sounds
for watching.
interesting.
We always love to have you here. We love to have you here live, listening on Castbox, listening later on YouTube, wherever you are. Of course, if you are on YouTube,
tuning your AM/FM radio.
Yeah. Pandora? No. Wait. Pandora, right? Wait, what's the what's anything? Yeah, well,
listening in Fortnite, we teamed up with Tim Sweeney. So we are talking directly to Fortnite players.
Yeah. Well, they need something to entertain them.
Yep, and Travis Scott.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe we'll team up with Travis Scott one time. We'll do like a.
I hope so.
That'd be pretty sick. But anyway, wow. Now I'm like lost. Oh, right. Wherever you are, it's where. I would like to point out that we are on Castbox. It is a podcast app that you can download to your phone. You can listen to us on the go, and that's great. And if you are listening there. We're also on YouTube. You can find us at the channel Casting404 on YouTube.
Yeah, and if you do subscribe on YouTube, you can catch us live. We do these live and in the moment, which is why they're just so exciting. And if you could be here with us, it would be great. We'd love to have you here. And I think that's all the stuff I like to point out to people.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, well, okay. With that, those were our thoughts. Those were our recommendations. Get wrecked.